Is the gentleman from California, Mr. Correa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, Mr. Dunn, I also want to convey my condolences at your loss of your son, Noah. I'm a father of 4, and every day I pray for my children. I'm also a Little League dad, and I've seen young children go from promising athletes to drug rehab. Terrible situation. Drug abuse, the scourge in our society, does not discriminate. Working hard to make sure nobody falls victim to the scourge. And Sheriff Daniels, I also want to thank you for your good work.
Thank you, sir.
I have a brother that served the LAPD for 30 years.
Thank you for your service.
He's got some interesting stories.
Yeah, I bet you do.
You mentioned human trafficking. You mentioned $3,000. Is that the price to smuggle a human being into this country?
No, it's $7,000 and up to be smuggled by the criminal cartels. For the drivers that are coming to my county, going to 3 hours north to Phoenix, Maricopa County, it's $3,000 per person.
I just got back from Central America, and the going price now is about $22,000. And most of the women, 80% of the women, by the time they get to El Paso, to our southern border, are either raped or sexually abused.
Yes.
And I would say that that's a lot of desperation, putting yourself at risk. A woman preparing herself for that eventuality and paying $22,000.
I would agree.
You know, like many of us here, I've had the opportunity to go to the southern border, El Paso, San Isidro, Canadian border as well. My job in Homeland Security. Only have 3 minutes left, so I'm going to talk about the San Isidro border crossing. When I usually cross that border, come back to the U.S., I identify myself to the border agents, tell them who I am, ask them how's the day at work going, and usually get average answers. One day, agent told me, look behind you. See all those cars? I said, yes. He says, they are essentially filled with Russian and Ukrainian undocumented immigrants. I said, it's new? They said, no, it's been happening for a few months now. Well, the Russian-Ukrainian war started. Those undocumented Ukrainians are now Ukrainian refugees. April of 2022, less than a year ago, I went back to San Isidro, actually to Tijuana, Mexico, to visit a refugee camp of Ukrainians. This is what I found behind me. Mexican government took a baseball field, turned it into a refugee camp. The Mexican police were guarding that camp to make sure those refugees were safe. American private and public donations poured in. Doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals came in from across the country to make sure healthcare needs were taken care of. This became a processing center for Ukrainian refugee camps. Refugees would come in 24 to 48 hours. They would board a bus, be driven to the pedestrian West Crossing. Title 42 would be waived. They would get a parole status and walk across the border. This is an example of how you deal with the refugee crisis right here, ladies and gentlemen. This doesn't look like El Paso. This is the way you address the refugee challenge. The Biden administration, thankfully, is now working on implementing a similar program, parole program for Cubans, Haitians, and Nicaraguans. But we still have the Afghanis that fought alongside our troops that are still hanging out there somewhere. Same thing for Syrians. And Sheriff Daniels, I ask you those questions because it's an issue of incentives, folks. Very, very desperate individuals, you got to give them a reason to go through the legal process because they are desperate. And the refugee challenge is not just the United States. It's a worldwide issue. And the solution isn't just here. Our neighbors, Canada and Mexico, have to be part of the solution as well. Under existing laws, this is the way you do it. I'm out of time. Chairman, I yield. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the witnesses for being